Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the work session for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2016 for the Marion City Council. Okay, we have a presentation.
Mr. White with the weather actually had called this morning and indicated that he'd reschedule. So
Okay.
we can move on.
We just shaved 15 minutes off of our schedule today. Okay. Finance?
Hi, Leanne Carey, Finance Manager. I just wanted to brief you a little bit on the purchasing policy that I submitted for your approval. It's a huge revamp of our current purchasing policy. Our current policy is just basically a one-page, really quick, basically just outlines the thresholds. This new policy includes the bid quote thresholds and a lot more detail as to how the process works. The major changes listed are probably the thresholds. They're currently at $2,000 for department heads and $10,000 for the city manager. We're thinking about bumping that up to $3,500 for department heads and $15,000 for the city manager. Another huge change, for you guys at least, would be I would like to make the deadline for the departments to submit their invoices Friday at noon, which means you then wouldn't get the listing until Tuesday. So that's one thing for you guys to keep in mind. Basically what happens right now is invoices are currently due right now Tuesday, a full week and a half before you guys even approve them. So that's already approximately 10 days that invoices are just sitting waiting to be paid until you guys approve them. So we would like to decrease that as much as we can. You know, a lot of invoices are due in 14, 15 days. And right now we can't pay them until they're approved.
So we would see them
You would see them Tuesday.
Tuesday of the meeting.
I believe Lon said he would prefer we not drop them into the city council packet folder no later than Monday at 4. So you'd see them Tuesday and then you'd approve them Thursday.
Okay.
Is there any questions regarding the policy? I know I gave you guys a lengthy packet that included the history of the policy and where the different rights were given. If not, I really have nothing more for you.
So is line, I guess, does this change the policy on buying real estate and things? Does that include the 15,000?
No, that's actually a separate piece, and that's a code, part of the code, not part of the policy.
Okay.
That's an ordinance.
Okay. So this is just expenditures, then day-to-day type expenditures?
Your regular operating expenditures, yes.
Yeah,
You'll notice this policy actually outlines what we currently put into what we call our Friday batch, which are like credit card payments, utilities, things that aren't necessarily approved by you before we pay them, but they are always eventually approved by you.
And will this still...
And most of the time where it'll affect contracts on my end would be the council may occasionally approve a budget line item for, say, repairs to the McGowan house for $25,000. And if we need to do some work on the siding and it's going to be $11,000, I would approve that contract under the $25,000 line item, but the council may not see that. But most of the time when I approve them in those ranges, it's not for an equipment purchase. It's a lot of times for professional services.
So on this, the bills that we see listed in the packet, will it be separate from that then, what we see?
Okay, what you see is a listing of all invoices that we pay that runs through our AP system.
Right.
Now the ones that, let's say we have it on a Friday council agenda and it's approved as a separate resolution. Right now you actually see those in the next council packet as paid.
Right. So we'll see them sooner.
So you will still see all invoices that are paid. It's just a matter of whether you see it prior to payment or after. And I've explicitly listed out those. And you've never had that listed in the policy in the past.
Yeah, so we're actually seeing it before it's paid now, or with what you're proposing.
What I'm proposing, it lists which ones would be paid prior to your approval and which ones would not, would include everything else.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the policy then actually would state exactly what we would pay prior. And one of them that I'm recommending is when we could take advantage of a discount right now, we just simply don't take advantage of discounts because we need your approval prior. But like Ingram, invoices that the library pays, is a huge example of where we could actually be saving a lot of money through
What
utilizing
invoices?
discounts.
What invoice?
Ingram,
Ingram?
it's where we buy a lot of our library books.
Okay.
We also buy supplies through JP Gasway, who also offers a discount. I'm sure there's others. Those are the two that come to my mind.
So, can I ask another? If there is an issue with one of the payments, then that will come to us to see. And if we say, we don't like that one, what's the recourse then?
If it was already paid, or are you talking about?
Already paid.
It actually would be no different than now. Now there are invoices that we pay prior to you seeing them.
Okay.
We pay our utilities prior to you seeing them because they're due when they're due.
Well,
The
reason I say
Visa
that
credit card statements are usually paid prior to when you see them.
The reason I ask that is that you're talking about paying it with a credit card, which I assume means when you do the stamp, the electronic signal, it's paid. So, how do you, if the council doesn't like something, can they rescind that, or?
You can certainly present it, and the administration would work to correct whatever that instance was.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other
Are-
questions?
Is there anything in the policy that you saw that you wanted me to change, or is it? I've been working on it for months. You can even ask the directors because I've bugged them repeatedly.
That's true.
If that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
So we won't see a bill for a new pumper truck on our credit card, will we? Oh, we will? Oh, my gosh.
That depends entirely on the amount of reward points we would earn.
Yeah, who gets that 1% back? The fire chief gets that 1% back, right? Brian, go there.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have one agenda item that we added here on Monday. This has to do with the potential real estate acquisition that we discussed previously. As the council is aware, we have been looking at the parcels located adjacent to city-owned parcels off of 44th Street. The land is currently, we refer to it as owned by the Tennessee family, but obviously that property transaction. The intent of the land acquisition is most of the what's this up here? The intent has to do with our garbage facility. This is a picture of our current facilities as it is now, as photographed from last year. As the council is aware, we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of volume that we take in the garbage facility. The numbers over the last 2 years, from 2010, has increased dramatically. Before, on our peak number days, we'd see about 980 carts, or 9 to 10,000 carts annually. Now, we're seeing closer to over 2,000 carts come in a day. This last year, we received 24,000 carts. Just for reference, what it looked like back in 2010, that we need this. The parcel in question, that is the primary intention of looking at. It included an informational packet for the council regarding the acquisition. We did submit an offer. The seller submitted a counter offer. It is the intent of the staff to put this on. So we have to review the information, review it, and then consider it, and then we would vote it up or down. So, any questions?
Questions?
No.
basically the parks, which aquatics, existing program and a recreational program. Resources. Park system, and also our parks and recreation finances in particular. We put together basically had 13 staff meetings today, and that's staff meetings with Confluence, who was hired to other steering committee about our fifth meeting actually looked at comparable Butte, Louisville, Urbandale, Western Washington, everything associated with what they compared to what we do. We conducted a public participation meeting to see in the park system. Physical verified survey that we did. We actually have 6 to that survey that went off, so that's with the consultants, that's about 95% survey that we did. Subcommittees and products, and then also brought back all that information to the steering committee conference. And again, all financial analysis that looks at our budgeting, looks at our capital projects, and looks at our cost recovery value, and how we should where we're at today as far as with the plan. The draft plan on the 10th of February. Then we'll have the final steering committee meeting on the 17th. And then so that's kind of a quick overview of where we're at.
Questions?
No,
Comments?
good. Will any of the the thing that you had last week, biophilic, that's it. Wow.
There actually was, and that was actually, Joe, that was work that was done more at the
Yeah.
We did pull that into the discussion part of it. I have not seen that final draft of the plan. Just exactly what that will look like.
I just wondered if any of that would be into this comprehensive plan. Is that totally separate or?
Yeah, I mean, within this plan, really, it'll, for the most part, it would speak to trying to incorporate some of that philosophy projects.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what the language you
Right.
see coming out of there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Sorry about butchering the name. Biophilic.
Always telling engineering. Can't tell them much.
We got you off track now.
The next item that I have is Waldo's Rock Park, and this is just to do an overview. Bill and Randy, again, this is a 7.4 acre parcel that was donated by Waldo. The property is adjacent to the goal of the rock, from what I came from about is where it probably is. There's a picture of the rock next to the pond with retention level. And over the course of the summer, portion of the rock started to split away from. So what we did, worked with Waldo Morris and his company to try to do so what we did was we had actually it provides two services for us. I was listening towards that. Stabilizes the rock, and also this area here. To kind of update, we're starting to occur with this project. We ended up working out in our contract not to exceed $9,500 to do stabilization of the rock. Actually, when his invoice into the contract of a not to exceed $500 because it was real important. We just did with our time. And we all that out and thank Walt one for the donation. Questions on
Mike, for those that haven't been out there, it's a little hard to visualize the size. That rock, even with the stabilization, it would be close to 30 foot tall. Would that be accurate?
yeah, I would say that from the base to the top, we're probably somewhere.
Yeah. You can see it now if you're on Partners. You can see where they've kind of cut a roadway back, which they needed to run the rock out there to stabilize it. And you can see the top of the rock off Partners. Or if you're out on 13, you can see it from the highway as you go down the hill. So it's something to see, and it's something to really look forward to, I think, as far as an educational unit for the University of Iowa, who I know is going to use it, and our schools and our other colleges. So it's a great addition, and I'm so pleased. It's on the trail. People will be able to walk down and rest in a little pavilion there. And
Here's Partners Avenue, both projects associated with that. Here's where, along with that, there will be a 10-foot. This is the Grantwood Trail. Also, we're looking at
Will that cover all of it then? Will that cover everything that's needed to develop?
most of it within this first phase again. So I would say 90%.
So what's next to be done? The parking lot, or?
Well, the first phase that when we start this next summer is for the roadway and all be working throughout the summer. First, we'll get the access in, rough graded it in. Everything graded out for the all the rocking, get everything done with the trail. Then we'll come back and all the construction. The last part will be to asphalt.
Is that all this year or into next year?
Actually, we'll see how the construction season goes. We have up to 2 years.
Okay.
So our hope is that will probably be some.
It won't be open to the public this year.
No. And I have to kind of always keep the safety valve when we're doing a project.
Sure. And the pavilion comes when?
We'll probably build that pavilion next summer.
Okay.
you're going to have a little bridgeway. There's a little gully between the trail and right there. So you got a little bridge to build.
We have another section.
It's going to be a great area for some wild whatever. But there's pheasants and quail in there. I couldn't believe it. Actually had a covey of quail jump up out there. And that area will be an area the park department can plant some things in there for the monarchs and do some things that they can't do some other areas. So
Yeah, within the plan and what we called out when we applied.
Has it been stocked yet, the pond?
No.
No, okay.
One component of it did will have retention basin.
Right.
Will there be power out there at the pavilion?
Eventually there will be power. Right now the budget doesn't.
Maybe
No
a
lights.
solar panel.
Solar panel?
And there's a very good possibility of that, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions?
You don't have a picture of someone standing by it, do you? Okay. I've seen it with the bulldozer sitting by it, and it's like rock and bulldozer.
It's sizable. Next item I have this afternoon is the project. We did allow park associated with the basically what we have within the plan. We have the development coming. Coming in off of West Williams. Part of the master plan that came in this area up through up to originally the amphitheater was so excuse me, and there was also associated working with the engineering department. For development. And the road down by the going up from there. Service both the sports complex. So we'll have that extra parking. Here again is that area for construction of the playground. Area. Park development out of estimated phase one cost for the project, working with our engineering staff, we come up with 72 at playground. So for a total that with this, we're due to construction of the project calendar for the project. Put it out a little bit. We're going to pick up grading, parking lot, roadways built, and then come back with another ready for the development of the parking lot. Out of the engineering. Working on that. We're still working on that component. And then council still planning on having that done within this construction season. Have a different component. So project funding, take another look at this. Currently, we have $200,000 dedicated in the current 30% corporate purpose. Then we made a first round of the local city council. And that's a new number. In the current law spending plan. The construction. So there used to be a building that was called the Brown Pavilion. This was going to be a project that walk through this process and the project with the park board, and it was a recommendation from the park board that we from that pavilion project. Wording wise right now. Kind of lining things up here. This is something that we're doing that because this is something that's slated that is on for February to make sure that this meets the balance that moving these funds over, which for all purposes. And will also come back to approved by the council to the law park development project. And then the last one that we still have kind of outstanding there, this is kind of that would be an additional deal bond or some other form of funding. So if you see that, I have that total estimate for the funding and then the total first one, phase one. Very close when we look at it. Now, the one thing that we could have
Does the Park Foundation have that kind of funding?
They have, they do have some funds in reserve right now. Been distributing, that they can do contributions on a little bit. To the extent of 25,000, that's something that they have to determine what that balance is. They'll probably do that.
Oh, that's fine. Just
I just was wondering about the pavilions at Thomas Park. Are they fully booked usually in the summer?
Now for, high usage areas, graduation time, they're booked solid for those. It slows down a little bit midsummer, and then it's sporadic throughout the fall.
Do you think you'll put that other pavilion back in?
I think we'll come back to that other
Okay.
pavilion, but probably at a smaller scale. Originally we had that kind of, my thought was that we would do something on the hill. Our portion of that facility, Sledding Hill, the ice skating rink, there, hot chocolate, frosty popcorn. Kind of a neat project. Might have to downsize it a little bit. Still like the idea of kind of a neat community in the park system. Yep, I will say, I am full.
Yeah.
Parking is a commodity. When we were looking at CIP and other, stay in that project a little bit. It is a big project.
How many phases are there for this Lau Park?
What was that?
Were there, you said that this was phase one?
Right now would be out there. Not a large restroom, something, 2 to 3 stalls. There, men's and women's. And then to do an additional as a designer of that entrance. Some of the landscaping over will start in the write those, get some funding to do some those in front of the park. There's going to be 12 down the road. That's the kind of plug in the additional $50,000 would come into that. So that phase 2. And from there, we'll have, again, when we get future roadway potential that we might do. That would be a phased in.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
The playground. So you have not contracts with anybody for the equipment.
No.
It's very similar. Just that picture, that concept's very similar to what they put out at Squaw Creek at the campground. Have you seen that?
There's an all-inclusive.
Is that what that? So that's what you're thinking is similar to that.
Similar in the components of it.
Sure.
Will be that exact design.
That was my question, because that's very nice what they did out there. That'd be fantastic out loud.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then you and I had talked once before about the pond. And is there any talk in the master plan about getting that more up to date? Upgrade it, yeah.
There's again, as you're aware, what the pond that's out there allow currently, and the water in the bottom. We'll have to come back to that. Pond complete. Currently do not have any. Get some closer cost estimates. If there would be opportunity, maybe they enlarge the pond just a little bit. So, and bring that to the council future. We're probably a few years out on that.
Sure. Okay.
With everything else.
Would there be, where all the parking is, like trails to the pond in the future?
Actually, and it where, and again, in this master plan, originally they were talking about a second in this area. Now, did the analysis for the amphitheater, found out was that the drainage site could not support the second pond. We're somewhat water starved out there. We could not have the second pond. We have the existing pond that's down here. Where it comes through the drainage part of the building. And at some point, this is the service road.
Mm-hmm.
Future is part of the project in that design is that time this trail that comes up would come up and the service road would actually cross the pond eye and come up through. Again, future projects down the road.
Yeah.
What about the pond on the east end there? Is that in the plans? Is there a pond on the east end?
This one here.
No, on the east end.
Oh, this one, yes, that's still in the plan.
Yeah. That's along 10th?
That would be a long-term street. Again, there has not been an analysis done yet, on whether that's
Has there been any consideration of planting trees for like sound screening and wind screening for the amphitheater?
Well, there actually already are about 50 trees. So in the future, more extensive planning. Right now, we've got this all planted out, and there's a row of trees that are planted
Right.
trail. As we build out into this area, park develops out.
What about on the south end for sound?
Now, as far as
'Cause
when you talk about South End for sound,
I don't know, can you do anything about that?
There probably won't be much as far as it from an acoustical value.
Not acoustical, to block the sound from leaving the park.
So you're talking about blocking the sound out?
From leaving the park,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know, is that a
Again,
possibility?
I guess the best way I can answer it at this time is that tree, which will bring that block in and to some extent out. And then out overall, as this whole area builds out, prairies and this area, that's naturally going to create that sound buffering all the way through the park in the future. And again, over the next 20 need that. Not only will that shelter, the far side will also shelter.
Okay.
Any other questions on the well?
Will your playground have a theme? Would you have like a prairie type theme or something?
We haven't gotten that far yet, Joe, as far as exactly what the theme would be. Some of that I was thinking at would probably, because it is, large scale project, we'll probably put small committees.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know you put those glass panels with kind of a grass-looking pattern on that, small stuff like that would go a long way on this as well.
And there are some real neat playground systems out there now that to look at, whether actually drops, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. That was kind of something that was in to make, but also have to something as well for the city.
Right.
Have you talked about doing solar panels out there too?
We have not talked about solar panels associated with the parking lot to the playground and part of the we haven't really discussed that. Looked at solar lighting, solar parking lots, cost-wise, and we build out and we start that study with an electrical engineer and like the safety monitors, that sort of thing. Some of that's pretty pricey though. And the last item I had was to forward to the council an issue that's kind of arose with the sidewalk outside of East Robbins Road. This would be our city limits. Come to light here over sidewalk that runs about 15 properties up to the Robbins Road. Basically, the sidewalk for the most part for the city, several complaints sidewalk through that area. Fairly long sidewalk. State code and city ordinance. With that said, it's a little difficult for an owner who has their property that basically for the through their backyard, get down. I think there's 5 lots through here. They've been coming out and doing a little bit. But again, we have big gaps in there where nothing. With that said, I just wanted to kind of bounce it off the council a little bit. Some of your thoughts and opinions. I do believe that it is a burden on the homeowner that we're trying to put a snow blower clear to the back side of these lots. They are sizable. Look at the picture. There's a pretty was pretty much overgrown. It was because of the summer and cut back and open this sidewalk. Again, I'll refer back to state code a little bit. Within state code, we cannot require the property owner to go out and remove trees within what technically is the right of way. There is some language code that basically puts that burden back on the city, but within state code, we can require them to maintain. Right now, it's kind of two different entities, if you will, maintaining that over 1,000 foot of sidewalk. To some extent, the city, to some extent, homeowner doing that. So it's kind of a difficult situation that everybody's in. So with that said, I don't know what the thoughts of the council are on that. You require the homeowner to maintain that. I have to imagine there are some homeowners probably out there that it's their responsibility. Do that, and I can people come to a council requesting that. I believe he's up off of this cul-de-sac right here. He was going to draft to receive that request for the city.
Are there other sidewalks in the city that we take care of? Are there other sidewalks, other examples of this, where the city takes care of them?
We do have the one that kind of comes to mind, Nick, is along 10th Avenue. Third, 4th Street. Have the same somewhat situation. And I will say, to get to the sidewalk from their property on 29th versus what they have to do out here.
What about like along 10th Street, like, that Indian Creek Circle neighborhood that backs up to 10th Street? Isn't there a sidewalk there? Who takes care of that?
Well, that's one of our overwidth, what we call that side path or urban.
Okay, so we take care of that.
We maintain that
I'm just trying to think of like, larger streets that have sidewalks along them like this one,
South 31st?
where you don't really think of the sidewalk as being the homeowner's responsibility.
Well, on 10th Street, across from Linmar, there's those apartments that back up to the trail sidewalk. I mean, we take care of that, right?
Actually, on the west side where the Azure apartments are, they maintain it.
And all the way down.
They maintain down to where there's a detention basin and 5-foot sidewalk, and there's stretch.
How wide is that site? It looks narrow.
I think
It's
that's
old.
a 4-footer.
It's not wide enough to,
Tom, do you remember that? Or
It's a 4-footer.
not wide enough to take a pickup down with a plow on, no.
No.
Who paid for that sidewalk?
We required the developer to put it in at the time of
Developer
subdivision.
put it in?
Yes.
So he
Yeah.
got the money out of the lots, probably. but-
It's just nice to have a consistent policy, so you're not,
If I could add too, is that this is a severe condition. There are other similar conditions along East Robbins Road that I would say the double-fronted lots that are probably more rural that you will potentially have to deal with in the same manner.
Mike, does the Parks Department handle the piece across the road from the Highview Detention Basin already?
I don't think there's
There's
a walk
this-
in there.
On the south side of the road, there's the piece that goes between Brookfield and
Oh,
Newcastle.
across the culvert that we
across the
just put
culvert.
in.
And actually, it doesn't show the sidewalk yet. Photo, but right through, there actually is sidewalk up to Brookfield in this area, and actually that is a city maintained in that area now. That we do go out for units, and it is, and that's one of the things that when the council is thinking and discussing this issue, we do need to go out there. That would be could also potentially do.
The sidewalk used?
Very much so. That
Mhm.
sidewalk gets a lot of use. We have a lot of the summertime again, when the trees go on the sidewalk. From people that do use it, especially with the connection, Cedar Rapids up here. And the sidewalk goes all the way through, and you actually see a lot of around and come down through, so it's seeing more and more use all the time.
Sorry. Well, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, the city council directed staff to start putting in sidewalks along very different spots on an 8-foot wide multi-use pathway, different things along our period. Policy was sort of kind of set by city council at that time, and if it was along residential, and they were the city would maintain those. So I sent an email to Mike with Parks and Aaron with Parks and say, these are the city-owned ones, these are the trails we put in this last year, and they added that to the list. The one along here across the culverts, that city-owned ground that goes in between Newcastle and was at Brookfield. So that's on the city list, so they come out and maintain that short little stretch. When we put the 4-foot path in along East Robbins Road, we didn't have the over width and over depth trails going in along there. If that would be happening now, if this was getting developed, it would probably be an 8-foot one or at minimum a 5-foot. But at the time, that was when the first one was going there, it was probably 2010 or 2011. So the sidewalk was put back there. The developer said, all right, I got to put it in, I'll put it in, but it's very difficult for those people to maintain. There really hasn't been a set policy for parks or us really on who's doing the maintenance on that sort of thing.
But you're-
Engineering's putting them in because we're directed to.
so you're saying if it was the right width, the city would be we wouldn't be having this discussion,
I'm saying if this came up now,
Right.
it likely would have been wider because we have.
and then we wouldn't be
policy
having this
now.
discussion because the city would be taking care of it?
Maybe. I mean, I don't remember what this road classification is, but when we rebuild most of the roads of this size, we add the trails along there, the 8-foot ones like along Power Terrace or along South.
This section will actually be downgraded once Tower Terrace is built from C to Alburnett. This will be downgraded to a local street. So,
And the rationale behind that was...
Darren's correct on what he's saying, but because that eventually will be downgraded to some point, it may not meet the standards of side trails.
I'm just trying to bring you up to speed as to how we got to where we're at now.
And the rationale on us taking over the maintenance on the 8-foot and the 10-footers is that homeowners would typically have the equipment that they would need to be able to maintain a 4-foot wide sidewalk. You can do that with a shovel, but when you start getting into the 8-foot wide ones, especially because they tend to be along major roads where they get more snow piled on them, that was going to be asking a lot of the homeowners to take care of something of that size.
So what's the request here for city council, for the council?
Really, there wasn't necessarily a request at this time. I guess my request would be if there was any direction from council as far as, that we would maintain still a section of sidewalk that the council would kind of, is there under code city ordinance, there is a little bit of
What's your opinion? What's your recommendation?
Before you do that, Mike, I want to add that there was a lot of discussion on this sidewalk when this was developed, and we insisted that the developer put it in because it's very intricate to this network out here. It really needed to go in. The developer assured us that it would be maintained at that time because it was their responsibility, and they pushed that responsibility onto the owners. I get the hardship. They could hire a contractor as a group and have it maintained. I know Mike wants to make it easier for him, and I understand that, but he's also taking on a lot more responsibility, I guess. But if he wants to do that, that's great. I mean, we can help him out. It is a hardship. There's no question.
That'd be my sense. Let's go back to the developer and see if they can get it resolved. But
we have been in discussion with scope as far as maintenance of the sidewalk to where they had put forward that they would look at maybe that they would maintain it sunset, and that would be the responsibility. That can be somewhat fragmented, sold, and different homeowners, and they do not have an understanding.
They have no idea.
What their responsibility is.
they should put it in their covenants.
I see Mike's point. I mean, it's probably more work for him with the notice, renotice. It's probably more work than cleaning it. So.
And again, that addresses the responsibility of the property owner, but it does not necessarily address the situation that we keep having out there and the impact that it does to the overall neighborhood and that lack of maintenance of that sidewalk.
Is there liability to the city potentially from lack of maintenance?
I can't speak very well to the liability issue, except that if we would take over the maintenance of it, then
Because we've accepted the responsibility for it. Yeah.
again, because it does set in the public right of way, we assume a certain amount of liability at this time anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, our liability, even though it's a public sidewalk and public right-of-way, the responsibility, the liability falls back to the adjoining property owner. The only time that we assume direct liability is if we have constructive notice that there's a problem and we don't take steps to address it. So if we get a call that there's ice on a sidewalk and we ignore it for 3 weeks and somebody slips and breaks an ankle, we're liable. But as long as we have a system in place for addressing those and we are actively pursuing it, we've got protection. We've got qualified immunity.
If we go out and assume responsibility for it and say we're going to take care of it now, then aren't we taking on the liability?
Yeah, just like we would have for the sidewalks around City Hall and the library.
Do the homeowners know that they have the responsibility and liability to maintain it? Maybe if they knew they had liability, potential liability, then they'd be, they'd figure out a way to take care of it.
Well, again,
I don't know.
as a property owner, I would think that you would know that. I mean, again,
You don't
It's on
assume
the other
people
side of
know.
that. It's on the other side of that.
again, and that's,
You don't assume people know. People are going to know that.
again, they have a sidewalk in front of the property, they have
Mhm.
the sidewalk in the back of the property. Do point out to them that it is their responsibility. The liability issue of the ordinance. The resident taking care of itself. For the most part, it is pointed out to the homeowner at that time. I put this picture back up again. It kind of goes back to my interpretation of state code a little bit. And that's that when we do run into the situation here with the overgrown bushes and stuff along the slope, which is actually within the city right away, at that point, there again, that's where I say that we assume some of it because we need to go out and we need to maintain secure fences. And it's hard to tell, but this was only about, I would say that was 5 foot. Everyone had to duck to even get underneath it, walking down the side. Their responsibility.
I'm sure most of those homeowners don't know that it goes all the way back. They're going to think that once they hit that hill, that's the end of their property or that's the end of their maintenance. I mean,
and that's where we've actually, when we've talked to a few of the homeowners, and it gets into language and abutting the sidewalk. Well, if you read the code and you read the ordinance, even though it's outside of your property line, you need to maintain that adjacent sidewalk, and that's where we get confused sometimes.
so you already are clearing snow down.
Down below, we already are at where that basin.
Right, from Newcastle to Brookfield.
Here,
So what would it cost, or what's your thought, what would it cost for you to go all the way up?
we're probably, snow removal itself, just removing the snow off of it, it's probably going to take somewhere around 20 minutes.
Those are probably $300,000-$400,000.
Starts running into the cost is when we have a situation like
Able to take care of the sidewalk.
with the icing. And the amount of time and labor
The thing is, this is
to go
probably
out
in
and
a
remove
half-acre
material off of that, so we could spend up.
That's a long ways from here to there. You have to get a snowblower and go up there.
Just to do it.
We have a bunch of ice and snow on it, so
Mm-hmm.
there is a cost
And you can't
associated
get through.
with time factor with it. And currently, right now, we're maintaining north of 20 miles of sidewalk side paths within the city right now, so a quarter mile that we have.
I think we would also want to clarify that if we had a tow catcher or something out here, we would notify the adjacent owner for that. So as that sidewalk starts to deteriorate, you want to make sure that the owner maintains that responsibility for long-term maintenance as far as the sidewalk itself, in my opinion.
One thing that we could do, we also start receiving. That would be one step that we could go first and see how it goes.
Put Dan's name on that. You can sign those, right? Yeah.
Whose ward is that?
Who planted all the trees and shrubs out there, Mike?
Yours?
I doubt it.
No, it's probably Randy's. That's probably 4.
They're ours, though. We could just go in and cut all those down if we wanted to.
We could, and when we went out there and we trimmed that all back, we left that buffer for those property owners. I think, when that subdivision was originally graded out, some of that was graded the way it was and not brought down to offer that buffer from Robbins Road to those homeowners there. So we didn't want to totally go in and clear cut it, could we? Yeah. Again, I've been coming through the doors too.
To Dan's point too, to the east along Vernon Cooper's property, it's going to condition, I gotta put that sidewalk in all along that south side there. The elevations aren't as bad as this, but still dragging a snow blower or whatever from the front through your property to do something in the back is the same situation. So you're setting up whatever you're doing to the east end. That's what I was suggesting when they come in. Whatever policy you sent me is what I'd be saying to them.
But what size of sidewalk are you gonna be putting in all the way up?
It'd be 4 foot right
gonna-
now with, the difference is now every 200 feet you gotta put a little 5 foot panel. That's the plans that were submitted.
Yeah.
4 foot.
And the north side, you have that same situation, except for they've all put fences along there. So they would have a difficulty getting through their fence and getting to their sidewalk once eventually that sidewalk is put in. That was put in without the requirement to put sidewalk in, but if at some point the city does, council does a requirement to put it in, it'll have to go in.
There are some of those homeowners up there that have their backyards fenced.
A lot of them, yeah, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Or,
have
yeah.
any idea how much, like a service would charge to clear that much sidewalk? I mean, would that be something to check into and then divide it by 15 homeowners? Couldn't they, maybe share that cost?
Association, that's one thing I did.
Yeah, they don't.
Question I asked if there was any type of homeowners association for that subdivision, there's not.
Should have been.
Sure.
It's never too late to put one together for them. They could always put one together for the purpose of this.
Just for that, yeah.
Be friendly neighbors.
So there's
I'm just concerned about precedent and,
Yeah.
and, I just want a consistent policy, so it's not like different in different places, So that we can say, this is the policy, and we don't do it for anybody else, or we do it for everybody.
Well, this time we don't do it for anybody else.
Oh,
I would
so
say
you do
so,
want a
yeah.
decision tonight?
I'm just asking.
Oh.
if there's any-
I thought I asked, what do you want from us?
I would say send a letter to them.
Started that.
I mean, I don't remember ever anybody maintaining that. It's always seemed, in my mind, always been overgrown. And what about between the street and the sidewalk? I mean, that's usually a bunch of weeds and ditch, yeah.
I think you work through the developer, and you have them get them together and say, hey, we have got to figure this out.
Because in Robbins Road out in this area is what I call from the Marion city limits coming in from Cedar Rapids, what I consider a rural cross section. The road ditches, those type of things along there, they do need some maintenance. That's a picture of them right
Mhm.
now. We took over maintenance this past year. We're putting together some projects to go in there and do some removals. Again, it takes time to do those things, but there does need to be some maintenance done on those road ditches.
The developer still owns lots there. They're a property owner. They can get a meeting together
Are
of the
there?
neighborhood and
Well.
figure out a mechanism to do this, to take care of it, If they come back and say, well, they're not willing to, or whatever, then we can.
Are there still empty lots there?
There's 5 lots undeveloped
Are there still?
along the street, along the
I know
roads, yeah.
there's, I don't know.
That was a little older photo.
Yeah,
Might be one or
because
two.
I know they've been building there.
Down on,
Oh.
I think down on this end,
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Because up at the cul-de-sac, or up, that's all filled up. I remember them building a couple,
are they filled in too?
I think they are.
Mayor, I think that's a good idea. I think we should have a meeting. Just let them know what our dilemma is. See what they come up with.
With the developer,
Well, with the
with the homeowner.
property owners, yeah. And the developer as well, but, because he had some indication that he was going to maintain, I heard.
How long ago was that?
I mean, if,
That
you
was
know,
the intent, was that owners would maintain it. The developer said he would maintain it until they were sold.
and it's not like you said, we're not doing it for anybody else, so
If they don't,
if they can get them all together and explain that this is, nobody else gets their sidewalk cleaned or whatever,
I think if you're maintaining
This
the
is the
ditches
city
now,
policy.
yeah.
Maybe they'll figure out a way to do it, to handle it, when they all talk to each other.
If you're maintaining
We're
the
just
ditches
guessing
and
at what
bring
they
'em-
might
make
do
it
or
look
say.
good.
Or volunteer to pay the city to do it. I think it's a good idea to have a meeting with it.
I say send them a letter.
Yeah, the one reason this came up again, most times along every cross section, we were putting the sidewalk in. Got all along on that, we were like, this is one of the first ones to win, and that's why you.
I think from what I'm hearing, I think what I'll do is I'll look together to the responsibility. We would start the process. Out that letter that says
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Been a while.
5 years.
Okay.
More than that.
So how come we didn't have start the, I know that Harry left, but the utility vehicles purchase? Was that,
It's already in the.
He asked
It's
that
already-
question before he left.
was already, pardon?
It was already budgeted for. Those
It's in the
vehicles,
budget
correct?
and everything. It's
Yeah.
part of the, okay.
One, I thought maybe you'd say something on item E there.
E under which?
For
Building? Yeah. For those of you that weren't aware, for council, Neil Caraway, who had been our code compliance coordinator and worked for the city for almost 15 years, passed away on Saturday. I was hoping that if Nick would indulge me on Thursday evening, right before we do our moment of silence, that we might say a few words regarding that and kind of dedicate that evening to him. Services will be Friday morning down at Theater Cedar Rapids. Amber sent a notification out to all the staff and council members about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your Honor, Mike is here to speak on item number 2, and then I'll get the rest of them under engineering.
Yes.
All right, so the sidewalk assessment committee met on January 21st and picked a few locations. So the first one is 27th Street on the west side. So last year's program was north of this, and we only had so much money to come south. So this is just extending it on 27th Street on the west side from 12th to 10th to continue that connection in there. The next location is the south side of Grand, filling in the existing gap that's there. So this is an apartment complex. Their sidewalk north-south, east-west. This has been on the list for quite a while to put it in there on the south side. The third location, this is 10th Street, Tower Terrace, and then Barrington Parkway. So it's just a small little section to fill in that gap. There is going to be some development over here, so it's just going to help connect all that in there so we don't have a little short gap in there. It probably should have been put in as part of North 10th Street, but it wasn't. There won't be any assessment on that. The city will just pay for that portion. And then the last section is East Post Road. So Menards is down here on Oak Brook, and they had to put that sidewalk in that connected down to the trail. So by putting this in there, now we're kind of making a big loop rather than have this gap in here. So they'll be able to come down from South 11th across Grand. This sidewalk was put in as part of the South 11th project. So now they'll be able to keep coming all the way to Oak Brook, come down to Oak Brook, Menards, and come down into the trail system. so just help that connectivity. We did look at just adding a crossing here, but we really don't want to have pedestrians crossing that without some kind of a beacon or something in there that's more safe with the 45 mile an hour or 35 mile an hour speed zone down there. Quite a ways to cross. With these, the preliminary estimate is $97,115, which is about $5,000 over the proposed budget. But we believe once we get into the final design, those numbers will come down and we can get it within our budget. So basically what we're doing is we're presenting this to you today. If you guys are okay with these locations, we will put together the assessment plats and they will go to the property owner per certified letter. We have to do posting in the paper. And you guys were lucky last year in that no property owners came in and protested it. But that's not normal. So more than likely you will have people in here, why are you putting it in my place? Why do I have to pay for half the sidewalk? Why didn't you put it on the other side of the street? Why my street? And so you're going to have those protesters, and that's their right to either do it by letter or to actually come in here and physically ask that.
And that's when we tell them to talk to you?
Yeah. But that's as a council, you guys get to take that beating. So, so I just want to make sure you guys are aware of it. But, that last year you guys just got lucky that you didn't have to do that. So.
This is a program that we've done well.
Yep. And it's gotten a little bigger. It used to be like a $30,000 budget. Now we're up to $92,500. So we're getting a few more sidewalks, a few more properties in there. So.
Good.
Mike, on that Grand Avenue one, is that across from the
Yep.
ballparks?
Is that across from Pierce?
Yeah, no, that's,
No, that's all
Sorry.
that's out there.
that's
So
the
there
retirement.
already is one on the ballpark.
There is already one on the north side, but on the south side it stops there where the red line is not. For whatever reason, that they weren't required to put in at that time, but to fill in that gap.
Sidewalk also goes south there to, I'm pretty sure,
Dan,
What percentage is assessed?
Typically, so I know this was in your packet last time. This is a typical letter that we send to the property owners so that they have that idea. So in 2009, the city paid for 90% of the project. They only paid for 10, but that one also had more city-owned property versus in 2012. You can kind of see it went from 84, 81, 92. So anywhere from 10 to 20% the property owner pays. The rest of it we pay. How it works is it's typically a 4-foot wide sidewalk, 4 inches thick. The property owner pays for 2 foot wide, 4 inches thick. If we have to take out their driveway, we actually pour that 6 inches thick. It's 5 foot wide. They only pay for 2 foot wide, 4 inches. And sometimes, like when we did South 12th, we had to go from the street almost to the garage because the driveways were just so steep, and we had to put that flat section in there for the ADA regulations. And so we paid for all that. All they did was they paid for their portion of the sidewalk. So they have a couple options. They can actually they can build it themselves, or they can let us do it. I believe there's one property owner in the history of the project that wanted to do it themselves. Otherwise, they just let us hire it out and do it.
So if they do it themselves, you reimburse them for the 90% or whatever?
We reimburse them only for what they would have got based on the bid prices. So we reimburse them for 2 foot wide, 4 inches thick is all we reimburse them. So it's to their advantage to just let us do the project.
Okay.
We have typically in the past picked up all of the appurtenances such as retaining walls, driveway work, so forth. There's nothing that requires us to do that. We could actually push more of the cost back on the adjacent owner. The council's just not required us to do that or ask us to do that. So.
Any questions? Thanks, Mike.
Next item is item number 3, which is Fairview Drive reconstruction project. This is the street that we have selected this year for full reconstruction from 8th Street to 11th Street. if you're all aware, Fairview Drive is north of Grand on the west side of 11th Street. Location. You may also recall that we were in here earlier and asked for additional funding for the west end of that to make a connection down to Orchard Road to help with EMS and so forth. In doing that, the project has grown. We originally budgeted $350,000. We have added that $50,000 of dollars to cover the connection. However, while we were designing the project, we've come up with about $150,000, $120,000 in storm sewer work that we had not anticipated. So the project has grown up to about $530,000, which is quite a bit over budget. We're recommending that we proceed with the project, get some letting, go through the letting, see what we actually get for a price for the project, and then see if we can deal with the funding at that time. It's a good project. We'd like to see it. There will be new sidewalks on both sides, new paving, and like I said, a lot of storm sewers. So well needed. It needs to be overlaid. It's just a condition that we can't overlay it anymore. So we've decided to recommend reconstruction. We are proposing that we would receive sealed bids on February 23rd. Work would begin no later than May 31st and have 70 working days. We would completely close Fairview. We would work with the adjacent owners to get them in and out as much as possible, work with those that have handicap needs and so forth, as we have in the past. So. Questions about that? It is. We will be presenting our work program next meeting. This is included in that work program, but we've got to get going on projects before we have that prepared for you to look at. So.
What's this connection?
Next item is item number 10, I think. Item number 10, which is another project, which is our annual asphalt overlay program. You have selected and you have approved locations along mostly in the southern part of Marion to about $1 million of budgeted funding. We have estimated a cost of $960,950 to overlay the 12 locations on the map. We're proposing sealed bids to be collected on February 23rd of this year and have 55 working days. Work would start no later than July 18th. They like to come in a little bit early sometimes and do part of the project and then come back later in the year. They just like to work us in to their annual program. So.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So 4th Avenue is getting done from 27th to 31st, correct? Last year,
Yes.
22nd to 26th was done on 4th Avenue. Why is the one block between 26th and 27th not getting done?
And we totally do them based on selection of need. That block must have been determined that it's not ready for overlay.
Okay. I'm curious. I know the rest of 4th Avenue was done in 1960, I think is what it said, and nothing has been done to it. I would assume
that one's a concrete section that's in good shape if you drive it.
Is it? Okay.
I asked the same question to you like 6 months ago.
Okay. Just making sure.
Thanks, Darren. I couldn't recall why, but I knew there was probably a reason for it. So.
Okay.
So we do have a lot of need. I mean, we could do twice this amount every year, but of course we try to stay within our budget. We have increased this. We were doing about $600,000 a year. We've tried to push that up to $1 million a year. I don't know if we can maintain that for how long, but the need is there. We have that overall need to keep with it. So when you look at those budgets, that's why that number is so big.
Okay, questions?
Item number 11 is just the payment to IMON for the Imagine Art in the Alley project. This is just a part of that approval that council made regarding the undergrounding of utilities in that location. So
that's the only cost for IMON is the $8,700?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll jump down to item 12. This is the property south of 29th, east of 10th, and northwest of Indian Creek Road. As you may recall, some of you were here during the time when we had Mr. Eckley came in and did a presentation on this property to propose some prairie establishment, prairie trees and establishment to remove and try to maintain the invasive trees that were going into this area at the time. I did that, looked at that, and wrote a memo to you guys explaining the history of that property. We did buy this property in '09 as part of the 29th Avenue project. We did use it for a borrow area for the project. When that project was completed, council did direct us to leave it low, to maintain it as a stormwater management facility. The whole area, we do have the entire 41 acres that is the city's down through this area. That was all donated and purchased through the project budget. We did about an acre of reestablishment of wetlands in this area that could not be affected for prairie establishment. But we are recommending that we not do anything with this area. It works as a natural area. It floods quite a bit, so we don't, prairie would be pretty hard to establish in this area. So we're recommending that we not do anything.
Still a lot of wildlife in there.
Yeah, I mean, it has potential for maybe some wildlife areas, some trails or something, but I don't know that Mike's interested in that at this time to be doing anything like that in this area. It does work as a preserve, I guess, for the wildlife. It does do a lot of stormwater management retention during the high water events.
How much of that floods?
Well, depending on the event.
On a big event, let's say.
We've had water come over 10th Street at this location, so it all floods in some events.
It's in, I think in 2002, it got into the basements of some of those places up there on Indian Creek Circle.
Yeah, several of these homes
over
were
there
flooded in here.
Yeah, but I think that was our high water mark of record.
Was running over the 10th Street Bridge.
The young kid.
Yeah, we actually, when we rebuilt 10th Street, left a low point in this area so that the water could get out and come over this way before it would flood into some of these homes. So I don't know if Mr. Hanson will be here on Thursday or not to speak with council. I think it was a good project in their mind for school to do that, but we're looking at a pretty comprehensive plan to do, to study this area, to reestablish it and so forth. And I just don't think it's a worthy project for staff.
Yeah, he had proposed to have goats in there. That's what I remembered.
I wasn't here for that meeting, so.
They did.
That was part of his recommendation was to put.
Release goats.
Yeah, and what he's considered invasive trees, willows and so forth, are actually good species for what we use it for as far as water absorption and retainage. So.
We've done nothing there.
No, it's a natural state. This area in here was replanted with natural species when we got done with it. This area is a forested wetland and wet meadow wetlands. We were required by permit to establish that, and that's now all established and replaced. It replaced wetlands. We're up here underneath the bridge.
Okay, any additional discussion on this?
Nick, you might want to ask on Thursday if he's here, that if he wants to speak or not. So if he wants to speak or not.
Sure.
I have a question. Have we made any further consideration to buy that lot up there on Indian Creek?
We've actually been in contact with the property owner.
He was the only one that, when we deferred sidewalks, that gave a pretty good price for that lot. That would give us excess back in there.
Which lot are you talking? Are you talking the old driving range?
Along Indian Creek.
Right,
That
where
one
the
and not
driving
the one
range,
down.
where the driving range roadway used to be.
The owner was back from vacation today, and I haven't had a chance to call him, but I will tomorrow.
Yeah, 'cause we could split that lot and keep half of it and sell the other half with the other lot. Somebody'd have a nice place to build there.
Maybe Jill would let us use their land.
Well, we'd have a roadway back there.
She lives right there on that.
Any other questions?
For the goats.
Goats?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Welcome home.
Mr. Dave.
Sure glad it snowed for you when you got back from Florida. You could enjoy it a little bit.
We just had the single item starred, G4. This is a rezoning request for 52 lots, single-family development. I didn't include an area on the pack, and I apologize for that. Subject site's highlighted in red. It's currently west of Albernette Road, runs north to south, and then south of Echo Hill Road. It's currently a horse equestrian activity. You got Oak Ridge Middle School, Echo Hill over to the east. This is part of Dustin Kern's companies, one of his companies. Again, 52 single-family lots on about 26 acres of land. We have some current development to the east, part of the Skogman's Prairie Trail. And of course, we have Oak Park that's developed to the east. We have Echo Hill that's currently at a standstill due to some land issues. That's development here. Then we have, several months ago, the City Council rezoned this portion north of Echo Hill in Albernette, owned by Tim Mooney, to residential as well. Balance of the property is agricultural around it, although our comprehensive plan is calling for future single-family development. So the rezoning request is consistent with the comprehensive plan as well as the adjacent land uses. I did include the preliminary plat as an exhibit. It's not up for consideration at this upcoming meeting, but will be in the future. I'll call it fairly typical Marion subdivision. First phase will probably be in this vicinity east. So you'll have an entrance onto Echo Hill, and you'll have the cul-de-sac. Second phase will tie into the Skogman second phase, which ends, first phase ends about here. So you will have this loop developing between the two subdivisions for the future. And of course, we're always going to push for development to the north to connect on Echo Hill and then open up to the west. So
What are the lot sizes?
these are all, I think, 9,000 plus, as I recall. They're fairly nice. They're about 80, 90 feet wide on some of them. I can't read that copy either, but they were all really good sized lots.
Good.
And Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval last week or 2 weeks ago. It was a condition of approval, but they did want to stress working with the city and Rockwell, getting together someday in the future, and recognizing the site. This is the site of some towers that Rockwell used as part of the space program a long time ago, and they just wanted to make sure that was recognized. I passed it on to the Historic Preservation Commission, and when they get to this area, we might look at some sort of plaque to recognize the signals that were bounced off. I don't know if it was the moon or other satellites there, but it was quite important back in the day. So, Any other questions on that one?
Is there any commercial in the master plan up in that
That's all
area?
residential, everything around it, including the intersection up there. So. We do have commercial. I think it's further west at C, but that's in Cedar Rapids. Then we have, of course, north on County Home Road, and then south at Albernette and Tower Terrace. So.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion?
As this development pressure occurs, we will be looking at improvements at Albernette and Echo fairly soon. So.
Thanks.
Ready? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to have a discussion with the council about some of the items that came out of strategic planning earlier this fall with the core value statement and then the values that supported it. Nick referenced some of these in the State of the City address, but one of the questions that I think we came out of there unanswered with was to what use were we going to put the core value statement? And this was what the City Council developed, stating that, the idea of a core value statement comes down to why does an organization exist? That fundamental question of why are we here? And this is what the city council came up with. My question really is, as far as its use, are we looking at replacing the mission statement? Because this is the city's current mission statement. The two are obviously quite a bit different. The core value statement is quite a bit shorter than the mission statement is, but probably a bit less directive in some of the things that it prescribes. So that was really kind of the first question that I had. What my intention would be is then moving into Thursday to have the city council adopt the core value statement and then the core values as part of the operating document going forward. Really the question that I needed to have answered was whether or not you wanted to replace the current mission statement, keep it, and have them be two separate items, or replace one with the other.
Yeah,
One
both.
thing.
What's that, Joe?
I said, I think we should have one thing. I think it's confusing to have two.
That was kind of my concern. That's why I wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, I like this, but, we've had this for
5 years.
7 years, yeah.
And then here, these are the actual core values. These would be adopted as well. And essentially what happens is these two become the preface to the strategic plan document that will then be brought back to the council for approval.
I think we should just have this.
Okay. We will look at retiring the mission statement then, unless anybody has objections.
I think
We ought to have it.
it's long, and I think something more concise like the core values statement, I think, works better.
Yeah, and if you think back to some of the conversations that were had with the branding discussion, he identified 4 or 5 other mission statements that were almost indistinguishable from ours.
I was going to say it's pretty generic. I mean, it's things that are just should be a given that are in there. They're just things you expect.
We'll get this up behind us, too.
Yeah, well, once we adopt it, we will, and we'll repeat it or share it at more frequently at meetings so that we're all reminded of it.
Okay.
That's my plan, at least. So.
We'll get that ready. The second item then is I needed to get some direction from the council on where to head with the TIF request from Captivating Crafts. Mr. Smith had approached the council about that under the understanding that he had put in a TIF request and had it approved. He'd contacted the finance department wondering where his rebate check was, and so we started digging back through to kind of find out what had happened with this one. The original request that he put in was in the wake of the state adopting new rules for the uses of tax increment financing, and at the time we were transitioning responsibility for TIF projects from the planning department down to administration, and so Mr. Smith's request came in at really kind of in the middle of that transition. There's not a lot that we have for documentation regarding, written correspondence or anything that was sent over to him. I provided a summary of what came before the council. We did go back and listen to the minutes from the city council meetings to see if there was a lot of discussion, but overall there's really a couple of points to consider with it. One is that if you look at the city's existing TIF policy, the existing TIF policy basically says, straight retail doesn't qualify. It really didn't matter what district it was in. I mean, the intent behind that is that TIF wouldn't be used to support groups like Walmart's, Menards, big organizations that came in that should have the amount of capital that they need to really do whatever project that they would like. So I went back through and did an analysis of really what happened with his property over time, because it was rather odd with the way the valuations kept bouncing up and down on it. So I wanted to see what kind of happened. But the big difference was that it made the transition from being residential with a rollback of 52 to 55% to commercial commercial, which has a rollback of 90%. So there's a big chunk of value that was added on there just because of the property reclassification and not because of the amount of money that he invested into the building. There was still an increase because of what he invested into the building, but if you just looked at the raw numbers, it made it look a lot more dramatic than it actually was. And we would not typically rebate money to someone for reclassifying a building. Because if you think about that scenario, you could go down to 7th Avenue, buy one of the other existing houses, and turn it into a business and really not invest anything in it, but the taxable value is going to go up. And the purpose behind TIF is to provide an incentive for the actual redevelopment itself. At the same time, this area was kind of unique because back in 2009, when this TIF district was originally adopted, we had an older type of district in there called an urban revitalization district. And under the urban revitalization statute, under the state code, anybody that does a project qualifies for a tax abatement, which is different than a tax rebate. So we were replacing an urban revite district with a TIF district. And so the council at the time said, you know, if projects come in that would have qualified under the old urban revite statute, we will look at providing a similar amount of incentive versus what they would have qualified for during under the old urban revite law. Basically, they didn't want to really shut anything off if people had projects that were planned. It is a relatively low amount that he'd be eligible for in his rebate. It's under $1,000, like I noted in my memo. That's the amount that I could verify was due to the amount that he actually invested into the building. The broader question is really a policy question for council as far as, you know, do you want to stick with what that prior council had said as far as, you know, we'll continue to do that, or do you want to say, you know, look, that was 5 years ago. At some point we have to say we're just not going to do that anymore. The staff, you know, we couldn't find a letter or anything that had been sent to him letting him know that his property was not eligible for participation in the program. The planning director would have met with him about it, and he recalls that that's something that he said, but again, there's nothing in there. Mr. Smith claims that a former elected official had told him that everything was done and the project was good to go. So I think he behaved in good faith, thinking that everything was done and that he would receive the rebate once the property values went up.
Shouldn't there have been an agreement signed?
There would have had to have been an agreement signed. The letter was received and filed. It was brought forward to the council for direction to negotiate a development agreement. It was removed from the agenda and never had further action after that. Without a development agreement signed by both the applicant and by the city, there is no deal.
I mean, that's really the bottom line. There was no agreement signed. We may have, I mean, there may be some reason why, you know, I mean, maybe we should have been more careful about making sure that we notified him. Maybe that's where the problem happened. We didn't notify him properly. But the bottom line is still there was not an agreement signed. And, you know.
Yep.
His assumption was, though, because it was in the TIF district, that he would be allowed to
qualify automatically.
Yeah, on the amount over, you know, and it's further complicated because it isn't just 1 year of the same value. There's 4 years, all with a different value on that property. But I would think that a compromise of some sort, Lon, would be that, because that was his understanding, and whether or not, I don't know who made him any promises. I've never talked to him other than here, but I believe that in my mind that he would be entitled to the amount of money he spent above and beyond, let alone the value. And according to your letter, that's about $900 a year for a 5-year period or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a fair way to clean the whole thing up. I don't know.
Yeah, with the way that we're constructing the new policy, the because the amount that he is investing would have been below a threshold, we would, under the new policy, we would set it up that they'd get a maximum of 3 years, 100%. I mean, at $955, I mean, if we have our TIF attorney do the TIF agreement and don't do it at the staff level, it's $1,500 just to prepare the agreement. That's why I'm saying we don't normally get involved in ones this small, because the expense to the city outweighs the benefit to the owner. If we were going to do it, we do have an amount that we set aside in the finance budget every year, or it's either in the finance or legislative budget, but it's for refunds of property taxes if something happens, like someone appeals an assessment or something like that. It'd be a lot more expedient just to write a check out of that and not go back through the whole TIF process.
I really don't see how he qualifies for anything.
Say what?
I don't really see how he qualifies for anything.
Well, if we say we've never TIF'd a retail, which isn't entirely true, if he were to ask the city, am I in the TIF district? Yes, yes, you are. And he understands that he has something coming. It's awfully difficult 4 or 5 years later to come and say, sorry, Charlie, this isn't how it works. You know, that's my feeling.
It comes down to, where did that misunderstanding come from? Was it, I mean, did we drop the ball and not notify him? Or was it just something he just assumed that he shouldn't have assumed? And, I mean, did he know that you need an agreement, a signed agreement to actually have, to be able to depend on this benefit, or, you know?
Well, I think, you know,
there's a lot of facts there that we don't really know.
There's a lot of things. I mean, this is the project that he's done. He's not a professional developer. He was doing this for use for his own business. Most people wouldn't know what you need to do to navigate the TIF process unless they do that kind of thing for a living. You know, I think in this case, he probably would have followed up earlier if he hadn't been told by a past elected official that he was good to go and everything was done. I know from the staff side, when we encounter projects that are not eligible, that don't meet the criteria, we are very diligent about telling people that, even if it had just been something that they're told in a meeting versus an official letter. That's the kicker on this one. We can't find that there was any type of official notice sent to him that he was not eligible for it. I do think he believed that everything was done and that he was in line to receive the benefit.
Somebody on the council led him to believe that there was nothing else he needed to do.
That it was a done deal. That was what he indicated to us.
I mean, we have no reason not to believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it would be what you were talking about, the $995?
$955, I think it is.
$955, and that's 5 payments?
That's
or is it
one.
Just a one payment?
That's one payment. Yeah. My recommendation would be is if the council wants to move forward with it and feels like that we should do something just in light of the confusion around the issue, that we would authorize 3 years of that $995, and we would have the option. We could pay it all at once and just have it be done. Pay that equivalent amount.
And that was what the policy was for the former district that it was in? But it was a 5-year thing?
It had the former district, they could have done 2 different things: 5 years, 100%, or 10-year step down. The new policy that we're bringing forward, because this is a relatively small project, would qualify for 3 years, 100%. That's my issue, is that, you know, we've got a draft policy that's going to be coming back to the council. I don't want to do a project like this and do 5 years, 100%, and then turn around 4 months later and have someone come in and apply and say, oh, no, I'm sorry, you only get 3 years. I think it should be consistent with where we're anticipating heading forward. And we do have other projects that would have met that threshold, that same threshold that's contemplated in the new policy, that were not retail projects. I think we did one with Adams Tile many years ago. Hannah Plumbing and Heating received an incentive when they redid the building south of City Hall. So there have been some that were smaller projects that we did help out with.
I think I side with Paul and his opinion that, you know,
It seems like a compromise, so.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know who talked to him. He's,
Yeah.
I'm sure, convinced in his own mind that he did everything he was asked. And, you know, he probably didn't. But I think at this point in time, I'd rather have a business person on our side than against us.
I've never gotten the sense that he's being insincere. He's not trying to game the system. He just honestly believed everything was done.
Yeah.
I agree. We should probably do something.
His honestly believing, you know, a certain set of facts, I think, is different from somebody from the city, council, whoever, actively leading him to believe that. I mean, you know, anybody could come in and say, well, I thought that you're going to do my sidewalk or whatever, you know.
Somebody was
But if
absolutely
he's saying,
wrong.
I think
if they
to
told
me
him.
that's what makes it kind of go over into the other side of we got to do something for fairness here, because if he's saying that he was led to believe by some action from somebody from the city that it was all done when it really wasn't, you know, then maybe some compromise like Lon is suggesting would be fair.
Especially since there's no proof that we said no. The city
Right,
said
and
no.
we can't find anything to prove either way, so.
Well, and, you know, there were 2 TIF requests that came in at the same time. The other one was acted upon. So if he called and said, hey, was my TIF request done, and the council member didn't know which one was calling,
Could have been
they
some
could have
confusion
very well
around
said,
that.
yes, you're done. You don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
Is it possible for him to come in here and speak to us and tell us his story?
Oh, I'm sure he'd be happy to do that.
That might be good.
I told him I'd get a hold of him after the meeting today, so kind of where we were headed.
Well, yeah. I don't know if we would treat it like the full package, but some sort of middle ground to show good faith on our part. We don't want to, you know.
Number 3.
Hope he wouldn't come in and, as he did last time, and blame Wes or anybody for what's going on. I would hope he'd come in and say, look, this is what happened, and go down the story, you know, because he didn't help himself any last time.
We don't need to be pointing fingers.
Yep. All right. I'll contact him and let him know that we'll have an item up for consideration Thursday.
Okay.
Yep. Number 3 is a receive and file for a TIF request for a project off of Albernet Road. This is a very large senior housing development. Unlike the other 2 that the council has considered in the last couple of years, this is a market rate complex. Will be about 120 to 140 units, about a $22.5 million project overall, with 3 distinct levels of care. There'll be an independent living wing, an assisted living wing, and then a full-on skilled care type of wing that could do, I don't know if they're specifically targeting memory care, but that would be the type of services that they would be able to provide. We have run this through the process that we will be using from this point forward to do an evaluation of the financial need for the project, and essentially what it comes down to on this one is because of the size of it, it's going to take a while for them to get the facility fully occupied, and so the amount that we would be contemplating would be based off of a sliding scale step down of assistance over a period of years. This is just the receive and file. We'll be bringing in, when we get to the point where we actually bring the development agreement forward, we'll have the site plan and the renderings and everything for it, but this would be a motion to direct staff to go ahead and start the process of negotiating a development agreement.
That's not what it says, is it? The motion is to receive and file.
Yeah, it's the receive and file. Yep. This is what starts the process. The receive and file is normally then accompanied on Thursday by a motion directing staff.
See. Questions? Discussion? Who's the company?
Scenic Development.
Where are they from?
Let's see.
They're an Iowa-based company out of, I think they originated in Iowa Falls area, the Iowa Falls area.
That's right, Iowa Falls.
And they have facilities, I think,
Letterhead says
throughout the
Overland Park,
Iowa.
Kansas.
Yeah, that's the group that's actually working with them on the construction and development, but the actual parent corporation is out of Iowa Falls.
And can you repeat again why they need the assistance?
In doing an analysis of the pro forma for the project, basically they anticipate, because of the size of the project and the number of beds that they have, especially with the skilled care, that it's going to take an extended time for them to reach their occupancy target. So without the city coming in and doing something to help reduce costs during those initial operating years, the project would not be able to be successful. But through that phase-in period, they'll be able to get past that and get everything filled up and then move forward. They won't need ongoing assistance.
So then, do we have a need in the community for a facility like this? If they're going to have trouble filling it?
It's not really a question of trouble filling it. It's just a question of how long it takes them to fill it. They have to have, on a $22 million project, they have to set aside a significant amount of money for that phase-in period, a lot more than you would have to do for some of the smaller projects. It's not tax credit supported. On the other two that we've done, that's one of the things that those tax credits from the state really help them overcome. But those are then also income limited because of that. This one, by virtue of being a market rate project, doesn't have those tax credits to fall back on. And even with what we're contemplating for this one, the amount of assistance that the city would be providing for this one would be lower than the amount that we pledged for match for the other two on the tax credits. Yes.
This one's more similar to Cottage Grove or Methwick
Yes.
in its makeup.
Okay.
So they want to defer for 5 years, 100%, and then
It would be a little bit less than that in total, because we would be looking at doing a 10-year step-down scale instead. So instead of doing 5 years 100%, it would be start out at a higher percentage and then move down every couple of years.
okay, which is our standard, what we've done in the past with others.
The other ones both received actually 10-year 100%. But those were, because they were applying for the tax credits, that was part of what they needed in order to get 100% on their match for their projects. That's why I said this one would actually be receiving less of an operating rebate than the other two did. But it is more in line with what we've done for other projects, where we start out at a higher percentage and then step down, so that we start seeing some benefits to the property tax base earlier. And when you do the net present value calculation, it also means they get a little bit less. If you do, for example, a 5-year 100% rebate on net present value, it might come out to about 4.5 years of actual cash. When you do it on a 10-year step down, it usually comes out to 4.25, 4.3.
Any other questions? Okay.
Number 4 is pretty straightforward. If you've been out off of 62nd Street, you can see that Victory Gymnastics has made a lot of progress, just with weather-related delays last year, mainly due to wet ground making it difficult for them to pour concrete. They have not finished the project, and the development agreement called for it to be done at the end of December. So this is simply an extension agreement that allows them to have a deadline where they can complete it in this year, and then we move forward from there.
All 50 pages, just to say they want to do an extension? Wow.
Like to be thorough.
If an engineer wrote it, it would be one page.
Okay.
And incomprehensible to all but another engineer.
Right, Mike? It'd be one page.
Well,
Yeah, I have something I want to say to dispel some rumors. I thought I was going to need the chief Saturday night. I did have an elephant sitting on my chest. and I've been doctoring, but I had some folks see me in the emergency room and thought maybe I was ready for the Presbyterian Church next week, and it wasn't the case. I'm here. I'm feeling all right. Got Scotsman in me. I got $90 worth of medicine. I'll be damned if I'm not going to stick around and take every one of those. So I'm fine. I've had a lot of tests the last 2 days, but we'll find out what's going on. But I'm here. So if you hear the rumor, don't believe it.
We did have one more item, and that was to figure out whether February 18th or March 3rd would be the best for the council members for the council photo, since we weren't able to take it since Mary Lou was ill.
By the way, she plans to be here on Thursday.
Okay.
I talked to her today.
So we could talk about that Thursday, just during the council discussion time. It doesn't need to be formal, since it's not setting a special meeting or anything like that.
Okay.
All right.
Is that it?
That's all I've got.
Anybody else have anything? We're adjourned.